when you think about the big accomplishments in your life,
Yeah,
okay,
there are many.
did they all, the lead up to them, was the lead up a struggle?
Let's
Yeah.
get it rolling.
Every single
Big
time.
ideas, money folding, hustle smart, dream so wild. Turn that grind into a joyride. Ha.
So this is a random story. I'm in the gym this morning in my condo building.
Cool.
And I'm like, okay, I'm going to work out. So I'm going to listen to a podcast. So I'll listen to Diary of a CEO.
Yeah,
It
cool.
starts playing the Simon Sinek one.
Yeah.
I only heard maybe the first 30 seconds.
I actually think I've
Okay.
done this too. Yeah.
So no, but this did not happen to me because what
Simon Sinek walked into your gym.
No.
Okay.
What happened was our parents are signed into my Spotify account on their TV at their house. So all of a sudden it started playing John Denver.
Oh, that's
Country
lovely.
roads,
Take me home to the place I belong.
So I go in and I'm like, oh crap, like whatever. So I put the podcast back on and then like I start lifting and then like 2 seconds later, John Denver again
Did it
is playing.
restart or just play from where it was?
No, I think it was a
West
different.
Virginia.
So
I can tell you a good story about that song. Actually.
So, anyways, I didn't actually get to hear the episode, but I did hear him just say a little tiny bit.
Yeah.
And so, what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a conversation with you
Okay, cool.
about this little tiny bit that I heard. Have you heard that whole
Yeah,
episode?
I know. I've only heard that. I've actually only heard the intro of that one.
All right. So maybe
This is
what we
weird.
could
We
do,
both have this
because it just planted the seed of an idea
Okay.
that I want to see where our conversation goes with it. And
All
then
right.
what I wouldn't mind doing is I'd like to see what Simon Sinek thinks of it as well. And then maybe we could talk about that afterwards and see
Okay.
if we came to the same conclusions.
Cool.
But I didn't hear much. Okay.
Okay.
But I want to then sort of pose the question to you. So when you think about the big accomplishments in your life,
Yeah,
okay,
there are many.
did they all the lead up to them, was the lead up a struggle?
Yeah, every single time.
Was there ever a big accomplishment you had in your life where you didn't have to struggle all the way up to that accomplishment?
I don't think so. I think probably everything was some degree of struggle. Some struggles were bigger than others.
Yeah.
You know, and by the way, that kind of accomplishment, like I'm assuming we're transcending like work here and going to like personal stuff.
Yes,
and like
definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like then for sure, you know, like dated some other girls and had heartbreak and that didn't work out. And then I met my wife and that was a huge struggle. For work, I mean, we had a couple of failed ideas or ideas that just didn't go that far, or even like more granular in the business, like working on different processes or betting on certain market plays that just didn't work out, to find the right spot, to find the right feature set, to get the feedback from customers and kind of go to market. So yeah, I think, you know, you gotta be careful. We've had some other folks on the show where it's like, you know, the journey is like, enjoy the journey, but I think it's actually the journey that creates a lot of the value.
Yeah.
But most of the time we focus on the end result, on the output. We don't focus on the 30-yard run. We focus on the touchdown.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of interesting, right?
So where I'm going with this is like my working title for this episode was going to be is AI ruining us?
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason I kind of
I
got
see where you're
thinking
going
about
with this.
this was I was thinking about my life and that all of the accomplishments that I've had have always been like the lead up was always a struggle, an incredible struggle. So like selling our business, getting my computer science degree.
Think of the things
you know.
that took you to get to the sale of the business.
Yeah.
And you obviously know it was an unbelievable struggle to
And
get there.
that's what shaped, you know, who I am today is not the accomplishment, but the struggle.
Sure.
Right.
Definitely.
Okay.
Hey, Dave here. Let me tell you a little secret. When we were building App Armor, we needed to move fast, especially with quotes and invoicing. FreshBooks made that possible. Yeah, this is an ad, but seriously, FreshBooks was essential. My sales team could send sharp quotes in minutes, and it automatically handled millions in invoices and reminders. No chasing, no stress, just cash flowing in. It was so easy to get paid. It's built for small businesses by folks who get it. And yeah, like us, they're Canadian. What's not to like? If you want to spend less time on paperwork and more time growing your business, head to freshbooks.com and start your free trial. Trust me, it's a game changer. And now, back to the show.
Okay. So then, all right, switching gears slightly, but sort of on the same topic.
Okay.
As you know, we're all playing with AI. We're doing AI stuff. So I'm like, oh, you know what? I want to start a new business, new software company. I'm going to use some AI tools to help me code. Okay. So you've heard this term vibe coding. Okay. And so I've used GitHub Copilot. I've used Claude. I've used a bunch of different AI tools to help me code.
I've played with Lovable a little bit. I don't know how to code, but I play with Lovable.
Right. Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
How far did you get?
Yeah, I got into a little bit. I actually kind of find it oddly, I get like oddly anxious or oddly like frustrated using it.
Okay.
Like on the one hand, it's very impressive. It can get you to like a, I don't know, version 0.01 pretty quickly. Something that's like sort of functional. And they're trying to do stuff. You can see like they're trying to, hey, use this backend database tool that automatically integrates with us. Use it. And so you can kind of see what they're really trying to help you be successful.
Yeah.
But it is kind of frustrating at times to just have to talk to the AI and the AI does something stupid or something very literal. Like, hey, this needs to populate this button or these fields need to populate a database table that has this information. You'll say that to it and then it replaces the fields and it has a prompt that says this needs to populate a database table. Here's a button to database table. And I'm like, no. Like the back end function, I want to, you know what I mean? Like kind of a weird, and then you can't like, it's hard to back out. Right. It's hard to, what do you call that? Oh my gosh, I can't believe I can't remember that right now. Yeah, thank you. My God, I can't believe I didn't remember that. Okay. But like, you can't like revert easily. You can't be like, hey, can you revert? It'll be like, kind of. It like it kind of like Frankenstein reverts.
Oh, okay.
But it's certainly a lot easier than going and learning how to code, if that's what you're getting at.
So let me. So I've been playing with these for probably about 2 years now, and I've had probably about 5 restarts that I've done where I've been building something, I'm using AI to help me, and I get to about like 80%. Okay.
Of what? The full thing?
Of a working product.
Like an MVP.
Okay. And then I run into some sort of a roadblock, and then I realize that I don't actually know the code that it's written.
Right, because it's doing the writing.
Yeah. So it's helped me.
That's the vibe coding, right? By the way, that's like it writes the code. You kind of just get it going in a direction. You kind of like vibing.
Exactly. So you're vibing with it, and you got this code, and you all of a sudden you've got a huge code base. Okay?
Yeah, it writes a lot of code too.
Yeah.
I've noticed that as well.
Yeah. So, and I'm sitting there, and I'm like, okay, I now need to do the 81st% of this thing, and I've run into a problem. I don't really understand the code, and I end up spending like an incredible amount of time trying to get by something that feels so trivial and stupid, but I just don't understand it.
Right.
And so then I would restart. I'd say, well, I mean, I'm going to take a break from this for a while. I come back and I start again. I start from scratch. I'm going to do it a different approach this time. Do it a different approach. End up at the same 80 blocker and not really be able to get past it. Okay. And I get to that 80 pretty quick, which feels really satisfying because you're like, oh my gosh, I'm rolling. I'm flying.
So is it really saving you time? Like, so sorry, just jumping ahead a little bit here, right? Like if you have
I'm not, I've
you
now
have to write all that stuff.
I've restarted 5 times. I've have 5 80% products that essentially, brick walled at a point where it wasn't, I couldn't figure out how to get past it, and I got frustrated. And I said, well, this isn't working. I'm going to try it a different.
And it's not like you're like an inexperienced coder or something. You're incredibly experienced.
Yeah. So, okay. So now I'm kind of sitting there and I'm thinking back to that original question I asked you about accomplishments in your life and the struggle. Okay. And what I'm really worried about is that using these AI tools to an extreme, which is probably what I'm doing or what I did in first 5 attempts. I'm going to explain what I'm doing now with it.
Okay.
But these first 5 attempts was using it to the extreme and trying to really let it do even the grunt work, definitely all the grunt work, but even the more complicated,
the stuff that you
parts.
might actually enjoy coding.
Yeah, exactly. And just sort of, I'm along for the ride, was
just vibing, man.
Just vibing.
Just vibing.
So what I've done now is I've stopped using AI, not completely, but the way I have been using it, and I've started using it in a different way. And I'm really using it for extremely focused, small things that I need help with. Okay. So before AI, when you're coding, you would, hit up Google and you'd probably end up at a Stack Overflow and you'd see people talking about something and, you'd, figure it out. You'd try that. It wouldn't work. Try that. Wouldn't work. It would take a long time but you spent a lot of time like digging through Stack Overflow, threads and, trying to find out how to do the thing you're trying to do. And like using code that somebody posted, maybe it doesn't work and you try something different and all the rest of it. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to use it for that like grunt work of going out and trying to find things on Stack Overflow. So rather than ask a broad question and have it generate like a ton of code, I'm having it just do
that's cool.
very, very, very specific things and saying and oftentimes
like, how are people doing this particular thing online? Like when they talk about, and then do you have it build the code from that interpretation?
I might say, I might actually take a crack at it, give it the code and say, hey, is this best practice?
Oh, cool.
Or is
That's
there any
cool
improvements
too.
that you can see here?
It's almost like rather than having it write it, it's like your supervisor kind of being like,
Right.
yeah, that looks pretty good, Chris.
Right.
Problem is though, AI also pumps your tires like crazy. Like,
Yeah.
wow, you're a genius for how you wrote that, whatever call. Like,
Yeah, I've actually tried to, with my prompts, I've tried to condition the AI to be like very critical.
Oh
of
yeah,
me.
I definitely tell it to be an asshole.
Yeah.
I'm like, yo, be as harsh as you can on this. Like, do not tell me I'm doing great or I'm doing smart, because I find otherwise it's very misleading actually in some cases.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So I'd say where I am now is, now that I've started doing this, I now have a code base that I've essentially written, but proofed with AI.
Yeah, I like that a lot more.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I know it and I like it. And
Cool.
I can fix any of it. Okay.
Yeah, that's the key.
And I think
Yeah.
it's a better product. I think
Cool.
I'm building
Interesting.
better code than I was before, but I know it. And that's, I think I'm bringing some of that struggle back into it. It's way more frustrating to do it this way. Okay.
Oh.
I've saved some of the grunt work of, Googling and looking up things in Stack Overflow.
Yeah,
and all the
like
rest of
less
it.
of a gain for sure.
So I've saved time there, but I'm keeping the actual like focus, effort, time, and all that sort of stuff. Okay. So that's me. Okay.
Huh.
Now I want to flip this on you because you're a dad. Okay.
I am a father.
You are a father.
I'm your father. One of my son is named Luke, so I'm your father. Anyway.
So I wanted to flip this on you though, and thinking about your kids.
Yep.
And how do you think about this as a dad?
Yeah, I worry about this all the time. I
Yeah.
was like, how are you going to know how to write an email? Like the thing is like a lot, like forget like big grandiose struggle. But here's the thing. So as a dad, I often think about what did older generations had this way of looking back and going, back in my day, we wrote our own emails. I don't know why the Richard Nixon, but we wrote our own emails. But like, I think about this a lot. Like we write our own code, for you.
I looked up, what people were doing in Stack
Right.
Overflow, and now you don't have to do that anymore.
And like, or think about like AI can do anything. So like, or like anything that like a child to teenager would need to do, like
Yeah.
at school, right? Math homework, whatever. Like, you write an essay, and I'm not talking about like I'm not really concerned so much about plagiarism. That is a concern, but I'm smart people will figure that out. And I'm not like something that detects like AI and it's or perhaps AI will have some sort of like flag that'll like something that like is an obvious this was generated with an AI tool beyond
Watermark, I believe is what it's called.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Look at you.
I know.
The score is Dave 10,000, Chris 1. But the thing I do wonder though is for their actual, they won't have the same struggle of trying to figure it out or writing a terrible email to somebody emailing back and being like, what are you trying to say? Or like, getting like, frankly, just getting stuff wrong sometimes.
Yeah.
Like struggling is part of being human. And on the one hand, you like the idea of it being easier for people, but on the other hand, it's kind of like, is this going to work out? And going back to my like old people, like always being like back in my day, I can't tell if I'm having that moment or if this is something fundamentally different. So
Right.
I can't tell if AI is something that's actually just going to be part of our lives and help people in a normal way, and it's going to be figured out and normalized rather than being so exceptional as it is right now, or if it's going to be something that actually disadvantages my children and all children of future generations coming forward.
Okay. So let's pause that right there.
It's kind of a big question.
Here's I want to talk about that for a second, because I remember when I was in late elementary school, early high school.
It was tough because like the pterodactyls could just like swoop down and grab a kid.
Yeah, happened. I lost Tommy. Anyways, whatever. I don't know where that came from. But I remember
It's a dad joke. I get to make dad jokes sometimes. I am a dad.
Speaking of dads, so our dad had a photocopier dealership, and one of the products that they sold was like this was like before PCs and stuff like that were kind of common. on. They sold actually these like typewriters that had like a screen on them. Okay. So like think,
Weird.
you know, like it's kind of a computer, but they were more marketed as like a typewriter because I think people knew typewriters.
Yeah, it
back
makes
then.
sense. Is it an electric typewriter? Is that what it's
Yeah,
called?
electric
Something like that?
typewriter.
It's
Yeah,
really weird.
something like that. So he was selling these things in his office. So he brings one home. Okay.
Okay.
And so we're doing our like writing up our essays and doing that sort of stuff. And then all of a sudden he brings one home that has spell check. Okay.
Oh.
And that was like,
Oh yeah, I remember this being a thing.
Yeah.
Not on that particular device, but I remember teachers, like my elementary school teachers, being like, yeah, well, you know, spell check. Now the kids won't learn actually how to spell words,
right.
And I remember like it would also like because they would make the point that it wouldn't understand grammar that well, which it does now, by the way,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
probably also partially because of AI. But you know, like if you were to spell color like with a U or without a U, like depending on the like your version of word or like the keyboard settings on your computer, like that would or wouldn't be a spelling mistake, right?
Yep.
And so there's all these things that are like kids aren't going to figure out how to spell. Like clearly, I know how to spell,
Yeah.
but like that's interesting.
That's interesting. So
Yeah.
like back then, our parents are having this like this technology is going to ruin the children because they're not going to have to struggle with how to spell words. They're going to use this technology, but somehow there was still struggle.
There's still struggle there, yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think there's still going to be struggle. Well, hang on. Can I
Do you see my point though? Where I'm going with
so,
this?
Yep. This is what I struggle with personally. My own struggle. Hey, let me give you. Yeah, you know, I like history. Let me give you a little history thing. Did you know that when novels came out, like novels, like books, there was like a novel craze, and people were really worried about young people reading too many novels and not spending time on all these other things, and really like eating up all those. Yeah.
Really?
Yes. Yeah. You can look it up. And so that's why I'm always very skeptical of something that I look at and go, that's going to be problematic for young people, where it's just me overcompensating as a parent or being worried about something that's actually going to be okay over time, or things that have like guardrails over time. I'd say a good one for the generation, like for the Gen Zs listening, is like social media. Like you can see guardrails now being implemented in certain places with regard to like how young you can be to get an account, online age verification, and like things like that's going to get better because that is a problem right now. The anxious generation, that whole thing. So I guess I see what you're saying. I think probably it's both kind of true. Let me put it to you this way. So spell check made our lives better,
Right.
made things easier.
Yeah.
There was less struggle there, but that didn't mean you didn't have to write the essay.
Yeah.
Now there's going to be a thing of like, because AI is writing the essay, the whole thing. Is there a new struggle as a function of that?
That's exactly where I'm trying to go.
Is
with
it the
this.
prompt
Yeah.
engineering
Right.
that is going to be the struggle? But that sounds kind of ridiculous.
Yeah.
When you consider that you can get such a small amount of input, even if you wrote like 3 paragraphs, that's a really detailed prompt. I write really detailed prompts, by the way, into ChatGPT or whatever. But like, so what? So you write 3 paragraphs, and it's a really good prompt, and it writes a hell of an essay for you.
Yeah.
You still didn't write the essay.
Well, yeah. So my hypothetical question here
Yeah.
then is like, how do you introduce the struggle when it comes to kids who are going to grow up with AI? How do you, or is it just going to happen automatically like it did with spell check? There were still other challenges to overcome. I feel like if you compared, oh boy, I don't have any data on this, and I hesitate.
That's
to make
okay. We can
this
say whatever we want.
recommendation.
We're on the internet.
Yeah.
Everything's real on the internet.
But if you were to compare like an essay from a kid before spell check and then an essay from
That's cool.
Kids after spell check, did the quality of the essays go up? Right.
They had to.
I think they had to.
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
So we're getting better output. So does this happen at another, exponential degree? That, hey, kids who are doing projects in school, wow, they're incredible. They're like commercially viable things.
Maybe, yeah.
And it's like, now it's not like, oh, Billy made a thing and it's cute. It's
Got
kinda
glue
ugly,
all
actually,
over it.
whatever,
Yeah,
you
it's
know?
like kind of
but like,
shitty.
Billy came in and like the model power plant is powering the room.
That's a Simpsons bit.
Exactly.
That generates real energy. It's powering this,
Yeah.
Martin.
So is that the struggle? Like maybe you have AI, but now the expectation is, wow, your model power plant powers the actual room.
That's interesting. You know what I think? I think Excel is actually a good example of this too.
Okay.
So when you go through school, you learn how to do math. You do a lot of slope. I remember doing a lot of slope, learning how all that kind of junk. Obviously, I really retained a lot of it.
Yeah.
Calculus, algebra, whatever. Then as soon as you leave school, you've been hammering away on this calculator, then you leave school, and then your boss is like, yeah, we do that all in Excel, and it happens instantly.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, to some extent, it kind of feels like education's job is to show you the way we get to the answers.
Yeah.
And then, and maybe for better or for worse, maybe it should probably show you like how people actually get the answer now.
Yeah.
But maybe there was some element of struggle baked in there. But I think in the workplace, it's going to fundamentally change. I think especially things, I mean, this is a bigger conversation too. It's just going to fundamentally eliminate these low end jobs. And it's already starting to do this where people would experience a lot of that struggle as well.
Yeah.
Right now, like that level of struggle is gone.
Right. Like it's
like if you can't, like if you're an entry level salesperson, I bet it's like you want to get into sales, which isn't totally common. But like, let's say you really wanted to get into sales. There's a lot of pieces of software now that do basically what SDRs do, like the low level salesperson. That role that won't exist. If it's already shrinking, it probably won't exist in 5 years.
What is being an SDR? It's a
pain,
struggle,
pain. It is.
Right?
It is living a shit life.
Yeah, it's the struggle that
I shout out to all my SDR homies out there. Like that is really, really hard work. That gets paid a really, really small amount in the sales world.
But think about the ones who get through that. They're the ones who become the incredible enterprise salespeople that are very good at what they do at connecting the right customer with the right product and providing real value. So, but and it filters out a bunch of people too that aren't maybe necessarily that great at it. But it does let the cream rise to the top. So I guess what's interesting is part of me is like, on one hand, AI is going to ruin us. It's going to make everything too easy. We're not going to be like, what are we going to do? We're never going to
You're not going to use it.
Okay. But then the other part of me is like, well, yeah, but there's always been like innovation happening, things from spell check to like, you name it. And we've always kind of like raised the bar.
There's new struggle.
Yeah. So is there just new struggle going to show up? And so like thinking about your kids, thinking about your daughter, where is she going to find the struggle? The scary piece that I find is that even back then, like we were, we had that typewriter. Our dad was selling like color photocopiers back in like late 80s. So we're like doing reports and handing them in. They look like, magazines that we're handing in to our teachers and stuff like that. Just like blowing them away.
You wouldn't always let me use the good one.
Yeah.
But anyway, like we had a lot of photocopiers. So.
It's a weird thing to have access to when you're like,
remember the laser ones and stuff like that. And I was like, can I use it? He's like, no.
But
cost a buck a print it.
But we were like way ahead with that technology. So we were able to produce and raise the bar pretty significantly.
It's interesting.
So if all of a sudden all kids have access to AI and can use that for what they're doing, do we just raise the bar? Like, wow, you wrote a report and it's like a page long and it, sort of does it. You're barely going to pass. And here's this kid who did this thing and went way beyond and like, oh, wow. Okay. Well, that gets an A.
That's interesting. I think you're really much focused on, if I may, on output, right? Like these tools, the struggle. Like oddly enough, we're talking about the struggle, but you still focus on the output here, which is like the things are better in the end. But I would say like you're also like AI is not going to replace the value of human interaction. Like you still need to talk to people. You still need to be good at those things. There's still going to be real struggle there. I think when you think about the biggest struggles in life, often they revolve around other people, like getting rejected by friend groups or being, or as a triumph, being included in a friend group eventually, or things like that. So, or like the value of empathy, which I talk about like a lot, right?
Okay.
Like I still think that like there's still plenty of struggle in other capacities. It's just some of these things that I know you don't like the word democratize, but a lot of things that are around writing or image generation or kind of some categories are, there's going to be a replacement of people who do the low to medium quality output will be gone. But the people who are true exceptional people, like you're never going to replace artists, like true artists with AI.
Right.
You're never going to do that. People will still respect when it comes from a person. And there's still tons of struggle there for those people to figure that out. Perhaps it's more like rather than the struggle starting here, it starts here, so better quality, everything else. But I still believe there's this fundamental place for human interaction. And and still a bigger level of struggle.
Yeah,
I don't want to get at. You know what I'm saying? Though,
I do. On this vein of like the struggle, but the bar being raised, I was thinking of, as you were saying that, I was thinking of our book launch party, and one of
hell of a party.
Yeah, one of the jokes.
Graham was there.
Yep.
Producer Graham was there. He's
Graham
not
was there. So our book launch party, what we had our staff from App Armor that after they found out we were writing a book, the joke was, hey, who's gonna be playing Chris in the movie version?
No, this was when we were in the office, and we were like, yeah, eventually we'll have a movie about us.
Yeah,
and everybody thought that I'd be played by Benedict Cumberbatch. So here, I'll just like look at the camera. Okay. And you wanted to be played by The Rock.
Yeah, Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
Look at the camera and say that you're The Rock. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah. Canadian Football League alum, by the way. But anyways.
CFL football. Wow. Anyway, sorry.
Something.
Yeah.
But anyways, so we that was the joke. So what I actually did for our book launch party, it took me about a week, but I used AI to generate images and then turn those images into video clips and then create like a trailer for Startup Different, the movie.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it actually it had some AI.
Yeah, it was obviously like
weird,
kind of rough.
Like the third,
only the elbow moving from the elbow kind of thing.
Yeah. Or like the third hand shows up randomly, that kind of stuff. But at the same time, that was a struggle. Okay, to get the AI to do the thing I was trying to do. It was frustrating. And it's obviously changing fast. I'm sure a year from now, I could have written a 3-line prompt and shoved in the book, and it would have done the whole thing for me. But at that point, that was the struggle. But the bar, what came out was pretty dope. It was a good little trailer. It was funny. It had like very dramatic scenes. It was awesome. So I think back 3 years ago, that would be completely impossible. So maybe what we're seeing here is there's still going to be struggles because the bar is going to be up so high that even if you have AI, even if you have these tools, your expectation is going to be way beyond just, it spit out, 3 pages.
It's weird to think that how much more intense school projects will get.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's a good insight for children listening today.
Yeah. And that's school projects. Now think about companies. Think about commercial operations.
Your base level expectation.
So high.
Yeah, for sure. Sure.
So I don't know. I think maybe AI isn't going to ruin us, but I think what we need to do is we need to seek out the struggle. We need to push the limits of the AI to the point where the output, the product, the whatever we're getting on the other end, the bar is super high. It's amazing.
And I think the way you do that too, for what it's worth, is just exposing yourself to a lot of different AI tools and trying to get good output out of them and trying to push the envelope and trying to do better prompts. But it is kind of fascinating to me. Yeah. Because if you think about that video, for example, you'd have to have experience in Adobe Premiere or whatever tool you use. You'd have to presumably have actors. You'd have to shoot it on location. You'd have to have lights. You'd have to have a script. Yeah. You're talking about a huge production. This wasn't exactly like Netflix quality, but it was convincing enough for that video, which, by the way, you can find on our website, startupdifferent.com.
I think it's on a hidden page.
We'll put it up there. We'll put it up.
I don't think we were allowed to make people that look
You
Dwayne
use an off-brand AI tool to do it. Yeah. We don't mind getting sued.
Anyways, so
that's cool. That's weird, man. That's a weird thought. That's weird. Anyway, but the struggle is real. But I think it's stepped up. Yeah. So anything else? Is that it?
Well, that's all I got.
You done, hot dog?
Yeah.
All right.
I got that off my chest.
That's cool. Let us know what you think about that. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.
Start it up. Let's get it rolling. Big ideas, money folding. Hustle smart, dream so wild. Turn that grind into a joyride.